Clara had always been a city girl through and through, a relentless admirer of soaring skyscrapers and bustling traffic. She could weave deftly across crowded sidewalks and outmaneuver oncoming taxis with ease, entertaining office buildings alive with fluorescent lights and humming with the energy of commerce. Yet, behind her sure footed stride and composed smile, lay a fear that none of her colleagues or friends could guess. As much as she felt at home in a high rise, the open air of a mountainside, where the ground would drop away beneath her feet, was something she could scarcely bear to think about. Heights might thrill others, but for her, the very thought sent a rush of ice along her spine. When her longtime friend Desiree invited her on a backcountry trip, Clara initially balked. Desiree was a nature enthusiast who spent most of her time traveling from one national park to another, seeking new scenic wonders. Sensing Clara's hesitation, Desiree argued that a break from all the noise and concrete would do her good. Clara had scoffed at first, reminding Desiree that her fear of elevated edges was real, and that it wasn't only stepping onto a glass observation deck that terrified her. She disliked even the thought of a footbridge across a ravine, but Desiree wouldn't take no for an answer. She coaxed Clara with images of serene forests, hidden waterfalls, and crisp mountain air that's known to clear the head and heart alike. In a rare moment of courage, Clara found herself nodding. Maybe she owed herself a chance not just to travel, but to confront the part of her that lurked on every balcony railing. Who knew? Perhaps she would discover a version of herself she had never met before. She accepted Desiree's invitation, bracing herself for the reality that soon she would be standing at the base of cliffs, guided by some wilderness expert she'd never met. Anxiety tingled in her stomach on the flight west, intensifying when she landed in a small mountain town miles from the nearest big city. The town, set against the backdrop of jagged peaks, looked like a painting come to life. Cozy storefronts lined the single main street, and each building's roof was coated in the warming glow of late day sunshine. Clara's nose twitched with the scent of pine, and her chest fluttered. She had to admit the place was beautiful, although from where she stood, she could just barely see the cliffs that soared beyond town, teasing silhouettes that made her heart quicken. Desiree was supposed to be there, but her travel plans had gone awry at the last minute, leaving Clara unexpectedly on her own. A bit lost, she scanned the arrivals area outside the modest airport. That was when she saw him, tall, sun-bronzed, and leaning against a weathered Jeep with a business logo across the door, reading High Trails Adventures. His rugged boots and confident posture practically shouted, Wilderness Guide. Clara approached perhaps more timidly than she had intended, but he met her halfway, a welcoming grin illuminating his face. You must be Clara, he said, holding out a calloused hand. I'm Jack. Desiree called ahead, said there'd been a delay with her flight, but you'd be arriving today. You're with me. His voice was easy and warm, as if he'd known her for years. She glanced at his Jeep, noticing the climbing ropes coiled in the back seat and a topographical map set out on the passenger seat. But the immediate reminder of what she was here to do made her tremble slightly, but she took a steadying breath. Yes, that's me, she managed. Thank you for picking me up. She was grateful for his calm demeanor. If she was going to spend the next few days facing her greatest fear, at least she'd be doing so with someone who exuded confidence in every breath. Jack ushered her into the Jeep, and soon they were heading along a winding dirt road that skirted the outskirts of town. Enormous pines crowded in on either side, occasionally revealing glimpses of towering stone formations that Clara was sure they'd be scaling in the days to come. Anxiety flared anew, yet amid that anxiety was the memory of how kind Jack's brown eyes had been. It reassured her more than she expected. They chatted lightly as they rolled deeper into the wilderness, each of them exchanging bits of background like strangers feeling out each other's territory. Clara learned that Jack had grown up near the mountains, hungry for adventure from a young age. He had turned that passion into a livelihood, guiding anyone from novices to seasoned climbers. He listened attentively when she explained her city roots, her demanding job in marketing, her fear that had mysteriously lingered since childhood. Their conversation, so effortless, tempered some of the angst smoldering in her chest. Eventually, they arrived at the base camp, a clearing beside a crystal clear stream, the water's gentle rushing a lullaby of nature. Jack carried her luggage to a neatly set up tent nestled within a copse of aspen trees. Next to it sat his own green tent, a little larger but similarly basic. Clara was mildly shocked to see how simple everything was. A circle of smooth stones for a fire pit, a collapsible table with cooking gear, and, in the distance, a large standing rack of what looked to be an array of climbing equipment. Before she could fixate on that last detail, Jack pulled a couple of folding chairs next to the fire ring, motioning for her to sit. "Before we do anything else," he said, "we have to talk." His voice was warm, yet she detected a note of seriousness. "We have a couple of days up here to get you comfortable, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Tell me where you think your limit is, because I want to make sure we don't push beyond what's healthy. But I do want you to stretch just enough to see you accomplish what you came for." Clara lowered herself into the chair, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. I don't know how I developed this fear. I mean, I grew up in a city with tall buildings, but those never bothered me. Enclosed spaces never do, I guess." She paused. "It's more that feeling like I could slip, that the ground would vanish," she admitted. "I've never been good at trusting myself physically. I'd rather be sure I won't get hurt. But I've decided, maybe too late, that I need to break out of that mindset. Life has passed me by too many times." A reflective quiet settled between them, broken only by the wind rustling through the aspen leaves. Finally, Jack nodded. "I promise we'll do this slowly. You'll see that the gear and procedures we use are safe. My job is to ensure you understand every step, every harness buckle, each anchor we place. But there's more to trust than just the hardware. It's about leaning on yourself, your own strength, and letting someone else guide you without fear. If you can do that here, you might find some new perspective to bring back to the city." His words kindled a spark inside her, something like hope. She managed a small smile. "Okay then," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Let's do this. I'm ready." By the next morning, Clara was greeted by an azure sky glowing above, a perfect day for practice. Jack insisted they start small. He led her to a boulder no more than 10 feet high, with gentle slopes at the top. He guided her through tying a figure-8 knot, double-checking the harness, and a series of commands every climber used: on belay, belay on; climbing, climb on. She repeated them with unsteady conviction, her heart hammering whenever she caught a glimpse over the edge. He had her practice leaning back into her harness, trusting that it would hold her suspended. The first time she tried, her stomach lurched. But after several attempts, she noticed she was shaking less, that the rope really was secure, and that, unbelievably, she was no closer to serious danger than if she'd been standing on the ground. He was patient, explaining everything with clarity. He would place his hands gently under her arms if she began to panic, a soft reminder that he was there. Each time Clara turned around, expecting him to be exasperated, she saw only encouragement in his eyes. And with every small step she accomplished, her confidence swelled. Over lunch, they laughed about how she'd squeaked when she first leaned back from the boulder, and she found herself telling him stories of her life in the city. She even confided in him about her last relationship, a year's worth of heartbreak from being with a man who expected perfection. Jack listened quietly, making small notes of empathy, and she discovered that in his presence, her chest felt lighter. 2 days passed in this comforting rhythm of practice, conversation, and slow progress. Each day, her fear receded just enough that she could scale incremental heights. At night, after the sun dipped below the horizon and the celestial glow of countless stars emerged, Clara and Jack would share stories by the fire. They would laugh at the day's missteps or talk about their families, their aspirations, the decisions that had led them so far from each other's worlds, only to end up side by side now. It felt like opening a door she hadn't realized was closed. On the third day, Jack found a moment to discuss the next step. "You've been making great progress on the smaller walls," he said, as he handed her a steaming cup of coffee in the crisp morning air. "I'd like to take you to this special place, one of my favorite cliffs, where the view is unbelievable. It's a bit higher than anything you've done so far, but I think you're ready." A jitter of nerves danced in Clara's belly, but she forced herself to hold his gaze and nod. "How high are we talking?" "Maybe 50 feet of climbing," he said. "It's more vertical, and the final overlook stands above a sweeping valley. If you can stand at the top and look out, I think it'll leave a lasting impression." Her fingers tightened around her coffee mug. "Let's do it," she replied, surprising herself with her own boldness. Was this really her? Only a few days ago, her heart would have thundered out of control at the mention of 15 feet. But with Jack at her side, his unwavering calm, his gentle reassurance, a surge of courage rose. Maybe she was discovering that she did have the capacity to trust herself. They loaded the Jeep with gear and left camp behind, driving up a winding mountain road until they reached a trailhead. From there, they hiked on foot through towering evergreens, the ground strewn with pine needles that gave off a crisp, clean aroma. After half an hour, they emerged at the base of a rust-colored cliff face, dotted with cracks, ledges, and bright patches of lichens. Clara craned her neck up, feeling a slight pulse of alarm as she realized just how tall it was. But a hand gently touched her shoulder, and she heard Jack's reassuring murmur. "Remember, we're going to check everything step by step. You've got this. And once you're at the top, trust me, you'll never forget that view." She exhaled, releasing the tension from her shoulders. "Okay, show me what to do." Jack worked methodically, anchoring their ropes, threading a belay device, and triple checking her harness. He explained where he would go first to set some protective gear into the rock, how she should follow his path, and what she might do if she encountered a tricky spot or started to panic. Something about hearing this rundown reminded her of an instruction manual, straightforward and free of the city's complexities. That, coupled with Jack's watchful presence, helped buoy her resolve. He took the lead, climbing up carefully, placing cams and quick draws along the way. He was graceful on the rock, his movements practiced and efficient. Before she knew it, he had anchored himself to a ledge about 20 feet up and was beckoning for her to follow. Clara's heart was pounding, but she let out a calming breath and began. Testing every foothold, she used the techniques Jack had shown her. Keep her body close to the wall, trust her legs for support, and remember how the rope above would catch her if she slipped. Every inch upward took effort, but it wasn't the terror she'd expected. The knowledge that Jack was holding the rope, ready to break if anything happened, helped her keep her gaze focusing on the rock in front of her rather than the distance to the ground below. At times, fear still threatened to invade her mind. One miscalculated step sent her foot sliding, and she let out a startled cry. Yet before panic could take her, the rope tugged reassuringly from above, Jack's kind voice drifting down. "You're good, I've got you, keep going." She found a better foothold and pushed on. Eventually, sweat trickled down her temple as she reached Jack's ledge. He grinned widely, helping her orchestrate the next set of moves. They ascended this way in sections, talking just enough to keep energies positive, but not so much that Clara would lose focus. The last part was a sheer vertical face, with only the smallest protrusions for her hands. Her palms were slick with sweat, her throat tight. Here was the final test. She tentatively placed her right foot and reached out with her left hand to a small crimp in the rock. Her mind roared with doubts. What if she couldn't cling to the face long enough to search for the next hold? But then she heard Jack's gentle coax. "There's a tiny ledge at knee height to your left. You can do it." And so she did, inch by inch, breath by breath, until she managed that last terrifying stretch. As she pulled herself onto the summit plateau, the wind caressed her cheeks, carrying away the clammy tension of fear. She awkwardly rose to her feet, taking in the expanse around her. Waves of blue and green rolled across the valley, dotted by tall trees, forming an endless carpet of forest. Off in the distance, the line of mountain peaks jutted proudly, like guardians of the land. For a moment, Clara was silent, let the spectacle in front of her sink deep. Then she felt Jack's presence at her side. Their eyes locked, and a breathless feeling rushed through her. In that second, the sensation of having conquered the climb merged seamlessly with the warmth blooming between them. She groped for the right words, but none came. Instead, she simply smiled, and he returned it with a tenderness so tangible it made her heart skip. He spoke first, voice hushed by the awe of the moment. "How do you feel?" She let out a shaky laugh. "Like I can do anything, but also like I might burst into tears." Her cheeks burned with an odd mixture of exhilaration and vulnerability. "I've never felt so terrified and so alive." He nodded, offering a gloved hand to steady her. "That's exactly it. Sometimes, facing what scares us opens a door to a deeper place inside. I've seen it happen again and again. But you did this. I just showed you the ropes." Clara stared at him, each breath laced with the crisp mountain air. His eyes, cast in the golden sunlight, flickered with pride. The day had stripped away her usual polished veneer, leaving her hair tangled and her face pink with exertion. Yet she felt no self-consciousness. In fact, she had never felt more real. Later, they found a little outcropping of rocks near the edge, safe, yet offering a stunning overlook. They sat side by side, knees drawn up, body warmth radiating in the mountain breeze. They munched on trail mix, sipping water, occasionally letting out sighs of contentment at the wonder of it all. From this vantage, Clara could see hawks swooping over the tree canopy. She never imagined she'd be comfortable at this height, let alone find it exhilarating. That was when Jack posed a question that reached beyond the climb. "What do you want to do when you go back to the city?" He glanced at her, curiosity shimmering. "You talked about always playing it safe, but is there something new you want to explore now?" She let the question linger between them, gazing out over the valley. Did she even want to go back to her old life the same way as before? Memories of her tidy apartment and routine job fluttered through her mind. Once comfortable, but now they felt stifling compared to the raw pulses of life she'd encountered here. "I'm not sure," she admitted at last, "but I know I need to make changes. Maybe I'll ask for that promotion I've been too afraid to apply for, or maybe I'll start traveling more. I don't think I can be the woman I was before." She looked over at him, and there was something in his gaze that further unsettled her in a good way. While her heart thumped, Jack slowly nodded. "You can transform your life if you want," he said gently. "Sometimes all it takes is that first leap of faith." The rest of that day felt like a dream. They rappelled down carefully, and Clara found that descending was actually more nerve-wracking than climbing. Still, she managed it, trusting the rope. By the time they reached the bottom, her muscles were trembling from the exertion, but adrenaline and elation were still singing through her veins. The walk back to the Jeep was unhurried. Jack teased her, calling her rock conqueror, and she bashfully tried to brush it off, but inside a warmth glowed at hearing him say it. That evening they sat outside their tents again, a crackling campfire dancing between them. Clara's entire body felt pleasantly sore, and she alternated sips of hot cocoa with contented sighs. Jack strummed a gentle tune on a worn acoustic guitar he kept stowed in the Jeep, adding music to the wind and rustling leaves. The flickering flames illuminated his face, highlighting the strong angles of his jaw, the soft warmth in his eyes whenever he glanced her way. When he finally set the guitar aside, he led her to a nearby clearing. "Look up," he said quietly. Overhead, the night sky was a vast tapestry. The faint lights of her city would have hidden such dazzling stars, but here they were vibrant and infinite. Standing side by side in the hush of the pines, their breath slowed, two figures made small by the universe above. Clara felt Jack's hand graze hers, their fingers tentatively meeting. She didn't pull away. They both spoke in hushed tones, marveling at the Milky Way swirling overhead and losing themselves to that tranquil moment. Each star shining there felt like a message, a promise that life was wider and more boundless than fear. In the corner of her vision, she caught Jack's soft smile. She realized the way her heart hammered had nothing to do with danger now, and everything to do with him. In that open clearing, tucked into the heart of a forest, with the sky as their only witness, he leaned in. Clara, feeling a slight tremor in her entire body, met him halfway. The warmth of his lips against hers was gentle, a tender question of possibility rather than any hurried demand. Something fluttered inside her chest, waves of emotion rising as though they might break through her rib cage. She tasted the memory of mountain air, smoky campfires, and a new sense of belonging that blossomed in that small fraction of time. They broke apart, breaths tangled in the hush of the moment. Nervous laughter slipped from her lips, and she pressed her forehead to his, feeling that, improbably, she might cry from the fullness of feeling. Jack's voice, low and trembling with sincerity, reached her ears. "You amaze me. Everything about you, your fear, your bravery, they're both real, and you carry them with grace." A fragile tear escaped the corner of her eye. She never expected to feel so exposed and so safe at once. Brushing the tear away, she tried to speak, but words crumbled into an emotional hush. Instead, she offered him a smile that held all the gratitude she couldn't yet articulate. They spent hours in that clearing, sometimes still, sometimes talking, nestled against each other for warmth. Clara told him how she'd always assumed she was destined for a routine existence, that her fear of heights was a metaphor for the walls she built around her heart, how stepping beyond them had seemed impossible until Desiree's push. Jack responded by recounting the many people he'd guided, the subtle transformations he witnessed in them, and how somewhere along the way he too became walled in, never fully allowing himself to connect with any of them. "But you're different," he whispered. "There's a gentleness about you that draws me in." She found herself holding onto his every word, caught in the swiftness of an unspoken promise. There, under a canopy of stars, they formed a fragile connection that simultaneously felt as old as the mountains themselves. Over the next few days, their bond deepened with each sunrise and sunset, each shared meal and laughter by the fire. Eventually, Desiree arrived, apologetic but thrilled to see Clara's transformed demeanor. She observed the spark between Clara and Jack and teased them affectionately, then threw herself into the next stages of their wilderness adventure. But for Clara, the highlight of her time was always the same, scaling more modest heights by day, then sharing thoughts, small jokes, and explorations of their hopes by night. It was as if each new climb taught her something not just about the rock face, but about herself and the possibilities for love. By the time her trip neared its end, Clara realized with a pang of sadness that she didn't want to leave. She and Jack had tiptoed into something that felt too meaningful to abandon. And yet she had a life back in the city. The job, the apartment, her obligation. On her final morning, they hiked down a winding forest trail together, letting the hush of the woodland around them soothe the tension of an imminent goodbye. At the trail's edge, where the jeep waited by the gravel road, Clara turned to face Jack. "I don't know where to start," she said quietly, fiddling with the edge of her jacket sleeve. "I live so far away, and your life is here." Though her words trembled with sadness, a spark of determination glowed in the corners of her eyes. Facing the largest fear in her life had emboldened her to break other patterns too. Jack cupped her cheek and wiped away the single tear that had escaped. "Nothing is impossible," he murmured, his voice soft. "There's a road connecting here to your world. Maybe you can visit, or maybe I can. I don't want you to think us, is just some fleeting wilderness romance." She smiled through the tears. "And I don't want to lose you. or the person I've discovered I can be. I'll come back, she promised, voice trembling. We'll figure it out. They kissed one last time, in that quiet sanctuary of pines and gentle breezes, the taste of salt from her tears enriching the sweetness of the moment. Then they climbed into the jeep, ready to travel down the mountain one last time. The day was brightening, the sun edging over the peaks, as if blessing their bond with golden light. When they reached the small airport, the moment to part arrived, heartbreak and hope entangled in each breath they shared. Desiree offered heartfelt hugs, then hurried off to sort out the luggage, leaving Jack and Clara a few private moments. He brushed an errant strand of hair from her face and whispered, "You are braver than you think, every single day." She laughed softly. "I had a good teacher," she said, "and I had a reason to learn." Their fingers stayed intertwined until they had to let go. She walked away, boarding pass casually clutched in her palm, tears fresh in her eyes, yet an undeniable sense of promise fluttering in her chest. As the plane rose into the sky, Clara found herself peering past the airplane's window, the ground dropping away beneath her. Normally, her stomach would have lurched, unyielding fear gripping at her. But now she breathed deeply, remembering the rope, the harness, the feel of the rock beneath her hands, and the quiet confidence in Jack's smile. Maybe. She still felt a faint twinge of fear at the height. However, she now knew that fear was not her enemy, nor was it an insurmountable barrier. It could be acknowledged, worked through, and ultimately transcended. This new perspective made her press her hand gently to her collarbone, as though cradling a secret. Within her, she sensed two truths taking root. She had discovered a deeper resilience than she ever imagined, and she was dearly, undeniably in love. She also knew crossing miles would not diminish that truth. The mountains had taught her that sometimes what seemed impossibly distant was well within reach, if only she had the courage and the right partner to guide her. And so, as the plane turned eastward, streaming across the clear sky, Clara closed her eyes with a small, hopeful smile. In the hush of her thoughts, she could almost hear Jack's voice reminding her, "Trust the rope, trust yourself, trust life." And she planned to do just that, no matter how high the path before her soared.